Hey y'all, what's up? Good evening, Brown Mamas community. I hope everybody is doing well. Hope your evening is relaxing. If it's not relaxing yet, because it's only 5:30 since it's daylight savings time, I hope you're getting there. If you're watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. And I am on tonight with two very amazing women because tomorrow is election day. We are on the eve of election day, and I feel like it's important as Black women from Pittsburgh, and even if you're not from Pittsburgh, if you're watching this and you're not from Pittsburgh, I feel like this is probably one of the most important elections of our lifetime. Especially since many of us across the country are voting locally. A lot oftentimes local elections get forgotten about. We go all rah rah when it's time to vote for president, and we forget about our local folks who are actually determining the policies, the laws, the neighborhood things that are happening in our communities, right? In our on our school boards, and our with our local judges, with our local mayors and council people, and all that type of stuff. So we need to be aware of what is happening right now, and not just what's happening on a worldwide stage, but also what is happening on a local stage. And so I have these two amazing women with me tonight. I have Allyce Pinchback Johnson. She is one of the founders and also the executive director of Black Women for a Better Education. Hey Allyce, how you doing tonight?
Good. How's everyone doing?
Thank you for being on. We appreciate you. And then we have I'm gonna say now I'm gonna choose right now to get your name wrong, even though I was saying it right the
Okay,
whole
you
time.
did.
Formley, and she is from VEEM, which stands for Voter Empowerment, Education, and Enrichment Movement. And they are a bipartisan organization that works, a non-bipartisan organization, I'm gonna get it right, that works to ensure that everybody in our community is empowered to vote. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sis. How you
Thank
doing?
you.
How are you?
I'm, I'm a little jet lagged.
Okay.
I don't recall what time it is. I'm just coming back on the getting back from Rhode Island, and even though Rhode Island is in the same time zone, my connecting flight took me to Chicago,
Mm.
so it messed me up. So me and my computer are very confused about what time it is here in Pittsburgh, and it's dark outside because it's daylight savings time. So I'm a mess. But other than that, though, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me, my feet.
No, thank you for coming on. I appreciate y'all. So everybody knows right now we are on the eve of election night. If you don't know, then you need to know, because we're going to talk about everything politics as it relates to Black women, and specifically politics in Pittsburgh, because that is where we work, that is where we live, that is where we play, that is where our children are being raised and reared at. And so we want to, just drill down a little bit on that. But it doesn't matter if you're from Pittsburgh or not, you're going to get a little bit from this conversation, just in terms of the importance of voting and why it's important to vote in your local election. So, real quick, in 60 seconds, can both of you tell me what your organization is about and how you're going to be supporting voters before Election Day? Well, Election Day is tomorrow, so as it is upon us.
You want to go first, Dr. Elise?
Sure. Black Women for a Better Education. Our mission is to ensure that Black children in our region get the quality education that they need and deserve. So, on one side of our work, we do a lot of awareness raising and capacity building. So, helping people to understand about key education issues, why they're important, and then helping people to mobilize around those issues. More specifically, connected to elections, we have a political action committee that endorses and supports the candidacy of Pittsburgh school board members. And so there are 5 seats that are up for election in Pittsburgh Public Schools, districts 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So they rotate every 2 years. It's either the odd number districts or the even numbers. So we have 5 candidates that we have endorsed for school board. All 5 are on the ballot. None of them are running opposed, even though they are not running opposed. It is very important to vote in what we call down ballot elections, meaning they're not going to be at the top of your ballot, but they are going to be on your ballot. And so one way that we'll be supporting folks is that those 5 candidates will be out at polling places. And so you may run into them at one of your polling places tomorrow. So please talk to them. If you've been following along with Pittsburgh Public Schools, there's a huge reconfiguration effort that's being considered. Ask them, what's your perspective on this? What can we expect? How are things going to improve, especially for Black children in our region? So, look out for them. We'll also drop some links today that'll have access to some profiles that local organizations have done. And then you can always find information on our Facebook page, Black Women for Better Education, Black Women for Better Education's Facebook page about them. And they're having some engagement sessions specifically around the reconfiguration. So if you want to meet them, they won't be any tomorrow because of election day, but over the next couple of weeks, you can also go to those sessions and meet them face to face and share your issues and concerns there too.
Yes, yes. And I'll just jump in if that's okay, Muffy.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I was choking on a cough drop. It's fine. Told you I'm a hot mess
You
over
okay?
here. It's
Are
okay.
you
I'm
okay?
okay. I'm fine. I had to get my water, go off camera. It's all good. But the Voter Empowerment, Education, and Enrichment Movement is an organization I founded back in 2017 because I saw the disconnect between, particularly in our community, a disconnect between people who are showing up to be a part of the polling process and the election process, but not necessarily seeing the value of voting in the process. I mean, we see this even with voter registration. Typically in Allegheny County, we have over 1 million registered voters, and yet when it comes time to actually show up to vote, it's usually around 25% of that. Presidential, it goes higher. The mayoral race in primary was, I think, almost at 40%, and it was higher than the county. But really, we really look at, not just registering new voters, but trying to eradicate those barriers for why aren't the registered folks voting. What are they missing? Do they, do we not recognize why this matters? We do actually a few things. We started off as just education, and over the years we've become an integrated voter engagement organization, which means that we are kind of doing a lot of things 360. We are at the PA Voice table, so we do targeted campaigns along with other partners across the state, where we are knocking on doors, we're doing phone calls, we're texting voters. Some of those texts are coming from my organization. We're also doing community events and partnering with people, and then we're also registering voters. And so with all of that, we're trying to bring people in to not only okay, yes, you're registered, and what? And then we are making our way into really engaging with folks. And we spend a lot of our time in the east end of Pittsburgh, mostly in Ward 13, which is East Hills and part of Homewood. But we have started to expand in the Penn Hills as well, and just really having those conversations about what are these offices, what do they do, what's the value here. But as Muffy stated, we are nonpartisan, and a lot of people, of course, always want to know, well, tell me who to vote for, or tell me how to vote on that ballot question. And my answer is going to be, I'm sorry, I cannot. However, here are some resources. Or go talk to your grandma and them. Go talk to your cousin. Go talk to your best friend. Somebody in your circle knows, has a strong opinion about why you should vote, and they can share that opinion with you. But I'm gonna give you some resources, and then we'll take it from there.
So I do have a follow-up question. So you said there's over 1 million registered voters in the city of Pittsburgh, or maybe
Allegheny County.
Allegheny County.
Mm-hmm.
What is the breakdown? What do you all found is the breakdown between those registered voters and the 25% that are actually showing up at the polls?
So I think that when we first got into this, we thought it was things like transportation. We thought it was things like, we thought it was like fixable problems with concrete needs that needed met. Oh, I can't get to the back, get there because I work across town and I won't make it back in time to get to my house because I work way over here. But then we also, in 2020, we saw mail-in ballots, get introduced. And okay, now we don't have that excuse anymore, right? It's not about it is the recognizing. I would say overall, it's recognizing the power of the voice, the belief that your one vote can count, and what do I do with that now? for the people. We have in Pittsburgh, we definitely have like, you know, a split in the community. We have our super voters who they gonna vote every time, and if we have an event about voting, they gonna show up because they love voting. And then you got the folks that didn't even see it, didn't pay attention to it, don't even know what's going on, and so that is where the integrated voter engagement kind of comes in. But yeah, we you know, and it's really just recognizing like the value of why does this matter, and so you know, a lot of our partners are starting to get into issues based, you know, advocacy in the C3 lane to try to help people understand the different, you know, understand how who you elect and who you vote for, or when you don't show up to vote, how that can lead to decisions 10 years later, that with a person who doesn't answer the phone, an office who's not engaged at all and does not show up and does not, you know, show up when you call them. And so that's kind of, you know, how we're trying to get to that.
Right. So I got two follow up. I'm sorry. I know this ain't on the list, but I got two follow up.
I love it.
Number one, what is C3? Because I don't know what after you said that, I was like, I don't know what that means. So I got to stop here.
Got it. Yeah. So we are. Oh, sorry. You want to ask the second follow up question too?
No, I'm gonna ask you that one first, and then I have a follow up question for Allyce too.
Okay. So there's actually several types of nonprofit organizations. 501c3.
Oh, okay. 501c3. Now, if you just said that, I got it.
Yeah. I just called it. I just jumped into C3. But you're right.
I don't know what you're talking about. You lost me when she started.
Yes. Okay, cool. Yes. So 501c3 versus 501c4. And so it used to kind of be that you didn't really see folks who are 501c3 in the advocacy section because you have to be careful about what you're doing it. But now we're finding ways to engage and, you know, around certain topics that aren't partisan, that we can, you know, help advocate from that side.
Okay, makes sense. And then, okay, because I know Black Women for a Better Education has had great successes getting school board officials elected. So I want to ask you about that experience and what is making the difference for y'all in terms of being able to get people out to vote, but also really getting people to like start caring about the school board again. Like, how are y'all helping people make that switch from like disinterested to like, I'm actually going to go out and take action?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, you know, we have been successful in getting folks on school board. And so we started our political action committee in 2021. At that time, that was 4 years ago. So some of the folks who are running right now were on that ballot 4 years ago because you serve a 4-year term on school board. And we were successful in getting 3 of the 5 people that we endorsed onto the board. So one was an incumbent, meaning they were already on the board and we got them reelected. And then we were able to flip 2 seats. In 2023, we ran 3 more candidates. There were 4 seats open. We endorsed folks in 3 of those seats and got 2. So at that point, we did have a board majority. So 5 of the 9 people who were on the board were endorsed by Black Women for a Better Education. And then this time around, we have 5 people that were running. 2 of them are incumbents, meaning that they're on the board already. And there were people that we endorsed, and then there are 3 new people. And you know, all 5 of those people are on the ballot. Again, they're running unopposed. And you know, they will likely win their elections tomorrow because they are running unopposed. So as of December 1st, pending the outcome of tomorrow's election, December 1st is a day that the board reorganization happens, which means that anyone who is won their election and is sworn into the board, we would have 7 people on the board who have been endorsed by Black Women for a Better Education. So that's 7 of the 9 people. So to answer the second part of the question, like, well, wait, you're talking, you're on mute.
I just said you need to run that back for the people in the back with some enthusiasm, because you know how I feel about that subject. I'm just like,
yeah, so it's a big deal.
Developments in Black Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
in 15 years.
Yeah, so in 5 years, we've been able to, you know, as of again, pending the outcome of tomorrow's election, get 7 people onto our local school board. And so you asked, so like what contributed to that? So I think, we got started in 2020 because of the pandemic and, our concerns about the way in which the district was responding to, like with education, like what was going to happen. And so, as someone, I'm a mom, I'm also a stepmom. I had stepchildren at the time who were in some of our suburban school districts. And, when we found out, the world was shutting down because of COVID, my stepdaughters went into school, went and got their computers, maybe on a Friday, in March of 2020, that Monday, they're on Google Classroom and it's business as usual. That's not what was happening in PPS. At the time, only 2 schools had one-to-one access to a device, meaning that each kid actually had a device. And even 5 years later, you ask kids if they actually have access to like their own device. That's a whole nother story, whole nother podcast. But nonetheless, folks were definitely concerned about, well, how are kids going to learn? We also had a Black mom, one of our co-founders, Amber Thompson, who wrote a first-person essay in Public Source about her child with an IEP not getting any services during the pandemic. And so all of this led to us saying, like, something has to be different about the way in which the district was operating. And so in a lot of ways, I mean, there was a captive audience around education. Kids are at home. Parents are trying to do the best to either, in PPS, work on go to a school and get some package, trying to do these packages, take pictures of them, call a teacher. And even for, families who are not in PPS, even the idea of like trying to work and do virtual and, trying to teach their kids or navigate, being online, with school, it was difficult. And so I think people were really looking to understand, well, what's the issue? How does this work? So you have a superintendent who is responsible for managing and running a school district and ensuring that their staff are doing what they need to do. But who's in charge of that person? Our school board. So our school board in Pittsburgh and in Allegheny County are democratically elected folks, meaning that we vote them in for these 4-year terms. Well, in some cases, I will say around the county, there are some terms that are shorter. So in Pittsburgh specific, each of the school board members serve a 4-year term. And so, our thing was like, well, one of the first things we did is we asked for our school board not to renew the contract of our previous superintendent because we didn't feel like he was leading in a way that he needed to. And they decided, 7 of them decided, no, we actually think it's fine. Let's extend his contract. And we know if we fast forward in history, a year later, he resigned amidst an ethics scandal. But because they allowed him to, have a renewed contract, he got to walk away with $400,000 in taxpayer money because we had to pay him out a year of salary and the equivalent of his medical benefits. So literally that's $400,000 that he walked out of here with that he didn't had our school board listen to us. And so, our thing was like, well, because they are democratically elected officials, when they do not listen to us, we get to elect new people. So that's really what, made us start the PAC. And so I think there's been a laser focus because of people's discontent with the school district. I will say, 5 years into this, as things have kind of, quote, come back to normal, some of that hyper focus on the school district has gone away. But now we're in a time where we're talking about reconfiguration. And if you are not paying attention to what is happening, you absolutely should be, because we're at a time now where these same school board members are going to be asked to vote on, are schools going to be closing? Are programs going to be merging? And whether or not that happens, what is going to happen in your school building that is going to transform education for your children? And so the folks that have to vote to get that moving and also to oversee the superintendent who has to actually implement it are your school board members. And so you absolutely need to be focused in on what they're saying. What I can say about, the folks that we have endorsed for school board, they are folks that are very much committed to education, to Black children. They have a hyper focus in that area. But I'll also be very candid and say that our endorsement of any candidate does not mean that we are going to rubber stamp anything the district is coming out with. They still have an accountability to us as taxpayers, as voters, to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. So, we're kind of pushing on both ends. Like, yes, we want to get some highly qualified folks in here who we feel like can make transformation happen. And we also have to hold these folks accountable. They have to actually do what they said they're going to do. And we always have to stay true to our mission, which again is to ensure that Black children are getting the education that they need and deserve in our region. And if that's not happening at the school board level, if it's not happening at the superintendent level, if it's not happening at any other level, then you're going to see a level of interrogation, or even criticism or agitation come from Black women for a better education.
I love that. So I got to ask a question, because there was a question in the comments, and I do feel like, even though I don't agree with her, I don't agree, but I feel like it's still important to answer the question. She asked, why can't you tell people who to vote for? If they are uninformed, then help them. Ask questions about their interests, ask questions about their satisfaction with the way things are going, because being politically correct needs to stop. We need to be direct. Maryn, can you explain why we need non-bipartisan organizations as a part of the voting process?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm glad you were able to grab that question, because and I get it, right? Unfortunately, there's a few things. And I don't want to belabor the point, but I would say more along the historic lines. We had people in our parties that were going around and engaging the vote. They're going around and saying, hey, I'm a part of this party, vote for these people, right? That's what they're there to do. So the information is out there, and that's totally okay. But for the people that may not be affiliated with a party, why should, I'll just counter, why should my personal thoughts be given to you to say, hey, I like this person, I don't like this person? Now, the official answer, though, is that 501c3s are grant funded organizations, and those grants are monitored by the federal, the state, all of those governments. And so on the books, our tax status requires us to be nonpartisan. And it is different than the nonpartisan status of, let's say, sororities and fraternities. They're 501c7s. Churches have a nonprofit status that is associated to them, but it's not necessarily a C3. So it's only the people who are under the C3 designation that really kind of have the most, that we just want to provide the information. But to be honest, since I got involved in this, I didn't think I was going to coming anywhere near this area, right? Like, I really wasn't. I was interested enough to vote, but that was it. And mostly I was voting by name recognition. Like, okay, this is what the people gave me. That's fine. But it wasn't until I recognized that our collective power can change things, which is, really kind of piggybacking on what Dr. Allyce was saying, right? Like, literally, that group got together, organized, and then got folks on the school board that are going to represent us. We were missing that opportunity as a community. And so for me, as I got into this and learned more and more and more and more, I was actually able to kind of uncouple my thinking from what I had been taught growing up. I was registered with a major party. I am now mostly registered with a third party, because I was able to understand, this is what this party stands for. These are the things they're going to advocate for. And here's where my values align. So that was kind of like a weird way to answer it, but I hope that helps who that was. So not only is that there's legal reasons and financial reasons that nonpartisan organizations cannot tell you who to vote for, but also I really take the value of being nonpartisan true to my heart. I will not tell people, because I think it's important that we do not just go by what we've always done all the time.
And I think it's also, this is the thing, I understand personally, just like you, Maryn, that politics can be very intimidating. Like, even y'all sent me that website for the ladies I was like, this is a lot. I can't.
That's a lot.
I was like, I
a
can't.
lot.
I like the ballot. I like showing the ballot because I know that's what people are going to see, but it's a lot to digest all at one time. So, Robin, I understand where it's like, just tell me, just give me the information so I can go and make the right choice. But
But I will say, I mean, there's some folks that are in the both and space. So Black Women for Better Education, we're in the both and. So we have the side, we have a fiscally sponsored side. So like that side is considered like under that 501c3 umbrella. So and like when you come to like our on the agenda where we talk about what's on the ballot, like not on the ballot, on our legislative agenda, like what the board is going to be voting on, or we have town halls where we talk about like what school could be, or you come to our learning institute to have your capacity build and understand key educational issues and how you can advocate or mobilize. That's all. Like, we're not going to talk about who to vote for, but when you come over to our political action committee, our PAC, we are going to tell you, we're going to specifically tell you, who we are supporting for school board and why, we wanted to flip certain seats and don't want certain people on the school board anymore. And there's several examples of like both and organizations in our city. So like One Hood, both and. You have One Hood, you have One Hood Power. The One Hood Power side, they do endorse candidates. They put out, scorecards around candidates and tell you who to vote for. Alliance for Police Accountability, they have a C3 and a C4. Keystone Progress, they're a statewide organization. They have a C3 and a C4 as well. And then to Maryn's point, like there's also, if you are registered with a major party, you have, the Democratic committee, you have the Republican committee. So within your neighborhood, our Pittsburgh is broken up into wards and districts. So for example, I live in Marshall-Shaitland. I'm in Ward 27, District 10. There are 2 representatives that are my Democratic committee members. And so their job is to come knock on my door or send me a letter or tell me who to vote for. That person will likely be standing out at your at your polling place tomorrow and say, here's who to vote for. Those people all fall under the category of like your Democratic committee. So the city of Pittsburgh has a Democratic committee to which all those people are involved. The Allegheny County has a Democratic committee. And those committees, those party-based committees, will also be standing out there tomorrow with a sheet that says, here's all the people that we have endorsed and we do want you to vote. So that information is absolutely out there if you're looking for that. And, to the point about, again, we also just have to talk about like how stuff is funded. Like Pittsburgh is a very heavy foundation community. So, a lot of the money that comes to fund initiatives are through foundations. Again, they can't fund partisan work. And so if that's the case, then, you have to, toe that line. And, also, I think sometimes we live in a city where, things are, kind of heavily Democratic. But to Maryn's point, like, are those things always just representative of our interests? Like, do we need to understand that, like, even outside of just like, vote all blue, are there other things that we should be considering? Now, a lot of times they are heavily correlated. And, a lot of the issues that, we want to vote for maybe do fall on that Democratic side. And, we also need to be doing some straight up scrutiny about who these folks are, even if they have that D next to their name, even if they have the same skin color as us, because some of these people, are not necessarily going to represent our interests.
So was Robin's response. I just wanted to, because I responded.
Thank you for adding that.
Give her the shine because I appreciate the question because I feel the same way sometimes. So let's get into it. So our next question was specifically about Black women. So what is unique about this election for Black women in Pittsburgh? I know I think that I've seen 2 Black women on the ballot underneath the judge. I think it was judicial judges category, but I don't know. I want y'all perspective.
Yep. I mean, I can jump in. I mean, I would actually say that every election is important for Black women, even the ones that we don't think so. But to, Allyce kind of mentioned it before, right? There is school board on this race. There is city council on this race. There is, and the judges. And so that is super, super important because it is impacting things. And I always am key to tell people the things that we did not show up for on election day 20 years ago are now coming to pass. There were elections where we did not in the local elections. When you look at some of the major housing, affordable housing, and some of the projects that happened in East Liberty, the development and the takedown of Shakespeare, Giant Eagle, all of that, Penn Plaza, all of that, the people that were in the decision making years ago were the ones that did that. And so, I don't have specifics for which things are going to come, right? But there's an affordable housing debate going on right now in city council. There is back and forth going between incumbent city council folks who are really kind of being called out for what they're doing and how they're going along. There also is I had the one housing thing. There's one more. It like, pew, okay, I'm gonna come back to it. I know it'll come back. But like there are these key things that are just out there. And in regards to, it was the safety. It was the money for, at least you might know specifically, or Muffy, you might know. It was the money for community programming around creating safety. And we had to advocate. People that look like us had to get everybody rousted up to come to city council meeting and fight for that money because it wasn't going to go where it needed to go. Those are the type of things. But again, you don't know that necessarily when you vote for that person or don't vote for that person. It's years later that all of a sudden there's a thing. And so that's why, we can't skip any. We need to be at that table and we need to be paying attention. That's my answer.
Yeah. I mean, I would also add, so, because this is a, local election, school board, city council, there's county council on some ballots as well. Those are the 3 local taxing bodies, meaning that these folks can raise your taxes. If you've been paying attention to the school board, there is a possible proposal to raise school taxes. The chief financial officer came out and did a preliminary conversation in October about, what the budget could look like. And it was like, and we think we need to raise taxes. Do we? Pittsburgh Public Schools has an over $700 million budget. Their budget is bigger than the budget of the entire city. Like, I'll say that again. The budget of our school district is larger than the budget of our entire city. And they want to raise
taxes.
And they want to raise taxes. And again, we can interrogate why and what's happening. So we also have to think about what's happening at the state level. We do have a budget impasse. So we don't have a state budget. We're the only state in, I think, America that doesn't at this point. And we know that there's money that comes from our state government. We know that there's a government shutdown. And so there are things that are happening at the state and the federal level that are impacting our budget.
Can we pause? Because I need people to understand that the SNAP crisis that's happening right now is in part because of the PA budget impasse. It's in Pennsylvania, it's not all federal. So a lot of people didn't get their SNAP benefits in October because of the PA impasse, not because of the federal thing that's happening. And that has to do with our local officials, not Trump.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we have to understand, what these folks, and again, like when you think about, things that are, in your community, like if you have issues around your sidewalks or issues around, things that are around your house, like you're not calling the president to ask him to support that, like, or to get you what you need. You're calling your city council person, and again, to Maryn's point, like who is down there advocating when we're talking about affordable housing, when we're talking about Black people in particular who are being pushed out of the city. If you look at the 2020 census, we saw the Black population of Pittsburgh or of Allegheny County remain steady while the Black population of Pittsburgh declined. Why? In part because Black people are being pushed out of the city center. We know that when people get pushed out of the city of Pittsburgh, they're being pushed into some of these smaller suburbs that don't have all of the resources and support to be able to do all the things that a city government can do. And so those are things that directly impact you. And so this is the reason why we have to be adamant about voting about these things. Because again, if your city council person is sitting here talking about, well, I'm here for development, but we don't really care if there's affordable housing as a part of this. Okay, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for where you're going to live? If you're renting, what does that mean for the person who wants to raise your rent or price you out, or wants to sell that house that you're living in to a developer to then do whatever. So all of these things are connected, as it relates to why you should be thinking about or paying attention to the folks that are being voted in. Like, these are the elections that impact your everyday life. Like, absolutely things that happen at the federal level and at the state level, but when you talk about your day to day and what is happening with you, what is happening with your children, a lot of this has to do with who is your city representative, who is your school board representative, who is running this city, what are their motivations. Like, let's also be candid. Like, our first Black mayor is only going to have one term. I mean, maybe he'll run for re-election in the future, but as of now, he's going to be a one-term mayor. When we look back at like voter turnout, yes, it was higher turnout in the mayoral election than on average, but like, when you look at the neighborhoods and look at where people were and where they weren't, we got to talk about, like, did we show up? Why did folks think that a mayoral election wasn't an important time to vote? And again, even this primary versus general, like in Pittsburgh, because we are a heavily Democratic city, a lot of times, like, the elections are kind of won in the primary. And so you do have folks that then end up on the general election uncontested, or up against a candidate where they're still going to win the overwhelming vote. But like, the real contest in our mayoral election, frankly, was in the primary in May, and a lot of us missed the boat on that one. And again, whether or not who you feel like you should have voted for or whatever, but we're not even talking about the number of people who voted for each candidate. We're talking about the percentage of people that actually showed up and bothered to vote.
And I want to bring up one more thing, like piggyback, and we could probably talk about this all night, just because that's just how important all of it is, and how much our passion, all collective passion for this topic as Black women, and about making sure that we're represented, right? We could go on this, but I wanted to also bring up, though, is that the person that gets elected, whether it's a judge, whether it's a mayor, whether it's a governor, they bring their folks with them. So that changes the demographics of the employees of that piece. So we saw and are seeing some of the stuff that's coming out, like, when you get, a Black president on the school board, then there's people who can be put into place. When you elect a Black judge, they need a tip staff. They're going to go look for somebody that they see as somebody who has their back. So that's bringing more diversity into the courtrooms, right? Like, so even just at that level, it's not just the person who's on the ballot. It is that the squad of the whole squad of that person who's on the ballot. And that is also can impact us in our daily walks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bert, for sharing. I think everything y'all said was very important. And I do want to just highlight, I know affordable housing is huge for everybody right now. There is serious housing crisis in the city. And our city council voted 5-4 in favor of an amendment to make affordable housing optional. If I was you, I would figure out if your council person voted in favor of it or if they didn't. I'm going to repost the list underneath this. So if you want to read it, it's in the comments. So wanted to move to the next question though. So in terms of the mayoral race, what differences are you hearing about most in regards to Black women in between O'Connor and Moreno? Yeah, I'm gonna leave it right there.
I mean, I'll be candid that I don't know if I've heard anything specifically about a Black woman agenda from either of them. I will say, frankly, as it relates to O'Connor, that there are some concerns about the campaign and the way that that campaign was run, and some of the dog whistles that kind of came out of the way that he was campaigning, and like what was being said about like our incumbent or our black mayor, and blight, and making associations that felt racist. And we also understand that, like, while those things maybe didn't directly come out of his mouth, the folks that were supporting his campaign, again, the political action committees that were contributing money or running ads or sending out mailers on his behalf, were doing some of those things. And so, my question is like, okay, if that's not your stance, then what are you going to do to repair relationships, or be very clear about your concern for Black folks in this city? And so that's my big question to him in particular, because I feel like that was definitely a thing during the primary. Again, like with Tony Moreno, like I couldn't tell you much about his platform as it relates to Black women, or where he stands with that. But I have that question for everyone. I mean, my questions for any candidate is, what are you going to do to improve the quality of life for Black people in this city, knowing that this is one of the worst places in America for Black women, and therefore one of the worst places in America for Black children. And then, of course, as someone who's coming from an education standpoint, whether or not you're on school board or not, I'm of the belief that everyone has to have a perspective on education. So I'm gonna be looking for that as well, because we're talking about our youngest population who can't vote, but are looking to the adults to make sure that they're preparing this city in this region to be what it needs to be on their behalf for when they do become adults.
I'll say that I can't necessarily say how these two candidates are going to speak about Black women, but what I can say is that Pittsburgh, as we know, is a very neighborhood centric city, and there are neighborhoods who in the spring turned up for one candidate because they were registered as Democrats, and they're now prepared to vote for the other party because in the general you can. So that to me speaks volumes. And the same way, and I kind of, I in my day job, I work for the county. I don't work for the elections department, but I get drafted on election day. So I get a chance to see a lot of interesting things and trends, and observations. And very similar to in 2020, when we had people show up just to vote for one person for the president and did not fill out anything else on the ballot because they were asking for help with how do I just vote for this one person? That same thing was happening in the springtime for our primary mayoral election. And in the community I live in, yeah, there is a preference, and the preference is now switched. We're seeing it in our Facebook groups, right? Y'all see it. Y'all, you know what I mean? And so that's really what concerns me, because to your point, at least, like, I don't think we're not anywhere near either candidate's agenda. Not really. Not as a demographic, not as a let's increase and improve it is very targeted things. It is, I talked to this person about this thing and they've supported my campaign, and so I'm going to call up that time that there was a fight at the pool and somebody got hurt, and that's a story I heard about, so I'm going to go and address that Black person situation, or I'm going to go address this Black person situation who is really looking about as a small business owner and what that takes, and I'm going to address that. But the collective, that's not coming. I haven't heard anything from either party's mouth.
That's difficult to follow up, because I want to ask, like, what do we do? Because at the end of the day, nobody is addressing us at this point. So it's almost like, what do we do post-election to hold feet to the fire? But we have to have something to hold feet to the fire on. And if we haven't come together to have a collective idea of what we're holding feet to the fire on, then there is no fire to hold the feet to.
We have to build our power.
Right.
It's as it always has been, right?
Right.
It is us.
Well, I do think about what Rochelle Jackson. What's the name of her organization?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Black Women's Policy Agenda. Yes.
And so I feel like, I think about, places and people and organizations like that where, when we think about like, what is the agenda for Black women? And then, how, how do we ensure that like, folks like Rochelle and her organization are sitting down, with whoever is elected, whether it be the mayor or any of these other
Mhm,
folks and saying,
mhm.
hey, we are out here in the community. We have heard from Black women. Here's what we want to see. And we have to show up. Like election day is a point in time. It's a very important point in time in terms of
Mhm.
picking that person, but we have to have that ongoing engagement. You have to be out in front of folks, on a regular basis, showing up to your community meetings, going to public hearings, knowing that these people work for us. And so, yes, you can reach out to them. You can, ask to sit down with them. You can connect with their staff. You can, make sure you're contacting them. And so I think we also have to take advantage of that. With school board, that one thing that we've been trying to do is think about how we support them with their capacity, because school board in Pennsylvania is not a paid position. These folks are volunteers, like, mayor, city council, even county council, they get a stipend. And so they have a little bit more wiggle room to kind of get out and get in front of folks and have a staff that can follow up. But with school board, we're like, okay, how do we help you all to get in front of people, to have more engagement sessions? How do we, with the folks that we have, push into some of these community meetings, hear voices, and then bring that back to our school board members to also be informed as well. And so, we do have to take that responsibility to say that, we're not just going to do the election day thing, but we're absolutely going to be asking these folks. And, one thing that works in Pittsburgh sometimes is a little bit of public embarrassment and public shame. Like sometimes you just got to call people out. And even when we wrote our letter to the school board back in 2020, okay, yeah, we leaked it to the media. Like, yeah, they need to know that we're writing a letter. In case they don't respond, somebody's going to ask about the fact that they're writing a letter. So you need to just think about how do you continue to push, even on social media, like when they were trying to, okay, we're going to renew this contract. Well, school code says you're supposed to do evaluations of the superintendent every year, and you're supposed to make them public on the website. We haven't seen an evaluation since this man's been in office. Like, and then all of a sudden, all these evaluations from like 3 or 4 years like showed up on the website. So sometimes even just that, public scrutiny, because we do. I mean, it's not a way to operate and govern where I feel like, we try to be very reactive. But if folks are going to, govern in a way that's reactive, sometimes we have to play along with that and say, okay, well, if you're going to be reactive, then we're going to make some noise so you have something to react to. So, we got to know that our power does even extend beyond election day to be able to just continue to hold folks accountable and continue to be loud about things that are important to us. And know that like, these cycles come up every, so often. And so, that's part of even our work with the Learning Institute to be like, okay, in 2 years, you know, another, the other half of the school board is going to be up. Like, what are we doing right now to see, okay, are the folks that we endorse that are in these even number seats, are they trying to run again in 2 years? If not, who's going to be their successor? Are there other folks on the school board that we didn't support? Oh, we're going to be looking for some people to do that too. And so I'm putting a plug out there now. Look for the information. Early 2026, our Learning Institute is going to start back up. And so if you're interested or you ever thought about it, and even if you are not in Pittsburgh, but you live in some other, city, or you have some, or part of some other school district, come talk to us. We will figure out how to connect you to resources to run as well, because, we need folks on these school boards that are going to represent our kids. So, you always got to have some stuff going on in the background as well to make sure that you're ready.
Y'all are such dynamic women. I just appreciate living and working and playing in a place that has access to women like y'all. Because the work y'all do is not easy work, and it's lifelong work, and it's oftentimes work you don't get credit for and you don't get seen for, but you still show up and do it every day. And it's also courageous because the shit scares me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it scares the hell out of me. I'm like, this is a lot, because our political system is not run by people who love Black people. So going into those rooms and going into those spaces and having the courage to stand up and be like, I work for the people y'all don't like. Just want to give y'all flowers for doing that. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up with two more questions because we've been on here for a while, but which I think are important. So First one is which down ballot races, because we talked about that earlier, deserve extra attention. And I'm going to couple that with like, what is the fast track way to evaluate a candidate's platform? Like, is there a fast track way? If there's not, then just say it. But what is the fast track way?
Um, I'll jump on for this one. So if can we pull up the ballot, Muffy?
Yeah, let's pull it up.
So in the city of Pittsburgh, the and most of the county as well, but this is a sample ballot from the city of Pittsburgh. The biggest thing that we are telling everybody that the ballot is front and back, and if you start at the back and the bottom and work your way up, you will not skip those important questions. One of the things that, and I, and again, this is what my nonpartisan hat on, which I know is like, that's how I was going to vote for. Just tell me what the answer for these judicial questions, right? But here's the thing. When you see money being spent, which is campaign signs, it's flyers in your mailbox to try to force you to vote yes or no, know that that is something that we have to pay attention to because they are throwing money at it. Those mailers cost money. The yard signs cost money. And if you go down the street in a majority Black community, you might see the judicial retention questions is vote yes. And if you go down the street in a majority white community, you might see judges retention question vote no. That means something. And it's time to you got to plug in. And offline, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, somebody to ask. And if you don't, I think Muffy or Allyce or myself can be personally available to say, hey, this is what's happening. But the reality is that, you also got to think about the judicial is so important. We also have, is it 8 Court of Common Pleas seats? I think it's 8. I can't really see this very well because I'm old now.
I know it's hard to see on this screen.
Yeah, it's 8.
Yeah, it's 8.
Yeah, there's legislative. Yes, it's 8. You got to vote.
Yep. And then there's 1 seat on our Pennsylvania Superior Court. There's 1 seat on the Commonwealth Court. There's 8 seats on the Court of Common Pleas. Okay, so even if we just focus there, and then judicial retention races on the back. Go back to your civics lesson, right? We learned 3 branches of government: the executive, the judicial, and the legislative, right? Right now, we got an executive in the White House that's doing what they're doing. You got a legislative that is locked up with an impasse talking about a government shutdown. There is one body that can hold these people accountable, and it is the judicial. That is the branch that checks both. That's where check and balance comes in. So we need to uphold our courts. We need to put our votes in here. We cannot skip them at any level. The times that, for example, the county was challenged as to the validity of our votes that were cast in the 2020 election, the midterms in 2022, and probably again in 2024, election result challenges go to those Commonwealth and Superior Courts. If you don't have people in there who believe in the power and the sanctity of the vote, some things at the federal level in the Supreme Court that are not being upheld. But Supreme Court isn't elected; those are appointed. So this is our power. And so some of the resources to pull up to look at, one of my favorites is 70.org. It is a nonpartisan. It's SEVENTY.org. But I think though Allyce also gave out a bunch of great ones as well. The League of Women Voters, but to your point, they have so much information on there. It can be hard to find some stuff. The Allegheny County Bar Association, they do judicial recommendations as well. They kind of give you like a little but 70.org, I think, does a really good job of saying like, who is this person and what have they decided? Some of the judicial retention that are on the back. Some of them are county retention. Some of them are at state level retention. Whether you vote yes or no, again, I told you which communities are doing what. You take with that what you will. But you can look at these type of websites to find out what have these judges stood for? What have they upheld? Even down for child welfare. Are they reuniting families? Or are they terminating parental rights?
Mm-hmm.
That's something to think about, right? Some of the folks that are running for Court of Common Pleas, they are folks who have been working as attorneys in those very same systems, in the criminal court, civil court, juvenile court, family court. What have they been doing? What did they do as attorneys? That sort of information is on these recommendation websites. So, of course, school director is really, really important. But to Allyce's point, a lot of them are running unopposed. The mayoral race is going to be what it is, because that's what it is. But really, the judicials are easy to skip, and that's why we're just trying to really help people understand we have to pay attention to those, and especially again, what's on the back, which is the judicial. And I'm gonna stop talking.
And I would also say, I feel like even, quick Google search, like most people are going to have a website, some things you can just see, their platform really quickly. And even just typing their names into Facebook or onto your social media, either their page is going to pop up, or there's a lot of folks that I feel like I'm friends with on Facebook that I'm always like, what did they have to say? Do they have work? I know there was, folks like, oh, like I do, the Court Watch program. So I sit in some of these people's courtrooms and, here's what I'm thinking. And so even getting that firsthand information from folks that, have some direct experience with these people is also important. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we can underscore enough the importance of judges. I don't think we've mentioned even reproductive rights and certain rights that we have in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that some of our neighbors don't have and have to come to Pennsylvania to have. These are the folks that make those decisions. And yes, while we still have a democracy, even though it's hanging on by a thread, if you got folks who are like election deniers or believe that, elections are rigged, and then they're sitting in our judicial, and when it comes to certifying elections, they don't want to do that. And they think that they want to storm the Pennsylvania Capitol or all the foolishness. I mean, these are things we need to be thinking about. Like, who are these folks? And, do we want to make sure that we have the right folks who are going to keep the Commonwealth what it is? I think back even to the pandemic, what was happening in Pennsylvania? What was our governor doing to make sure that there was still a level of safety, or that we were still having resources, versus other states where, governors were just like, oh, just, go outside and just do what you want to do, and vaccines don't work, and, whatever. And so, these are things also that, you should think about or consider as it relates to, who you should vote for.
I know one of the things that I checked this week was WESA slate. They have a slate of 8 on their website, and you can go and look, and it tells you everything from what the judge's record is, what were their former careers, how much they spent, how many donations they got, because that tells you a lot. So there are resources. I agree with Allyce. And then you can find so much information just putting their name in a Facebook search. So much information. So I'm not saying believe what everybody says on Facebook. I'm just saying you can take the tone of what's being said, and it can help you. It's like context clues. It can help you alongside some more reputable information from a source like WESA, which is public radio, which means they don't, public radio is under attack right now because it's not leaning towards any one side. They're like the Associated Press. They just tell you what's happening in the news. I also use Ground News to check sources. Ground News is an app that will tell you this article is leaning towards this way. It's leaning towards this way. It's been influenced by AI. It's factual or it's not factual. So there's a ton of resources. If you just do a simple Google search, there's a ton of resources. Allyce just put in the comments that the New Pittsburgh Courier also endorses candidates. And we know the New Pittsburgh Courier it's not just a Black newspaper in Pittsburgh. New Pittsburgh Courier is the longest running Black run newspaper in the country. I think, and the Chicago Defenders, between the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defenders. So they have a long history of putting out these types of, reports about candidates. And so they're not just remembering what happened last year, they're remembering what happened 50 years ago with this person's uncle who was running for office. So check the New Pittsburgh Courier out. There's a ton of resources out there if you really want to know. And I understand, especially for some of our mamas, if you didn't know what was happening in the last year election cycle, that's okay. That's why we have the resources we have now, the media we have now, social media. That's why you got your auntie, your uncle, your friend, because you can go and ask these questions and you can get answers. And not to even mention, you are smart your damn self. Like, you know what's good for you. You know what's good for your kids. You know what's good for your community. You know what you love and what you don't love. And don't be afraid to show up and ask for help. Allyce had mentioned you're going to get to the polls tomorrow and there's going to be people outside. Find somebody that looks like you, somebody that you feel comfortable with, and say, what are you doing here? There's nothing wrong with that. So just empower yourself, because you are powerful. You're not powerless. Like, you are powerful in and of yourself. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else. I think that was it. Oh, last, so we can close out. What's one concrete action that each viewer can take today to help 3 more Black women that they know get to the polls tomorrow? I'm gonna take this off the screen so we can see y'all face.
I would just say, like, make a Facebook status, text someone, call someone, like, make sure they have a plan. If you have a mail-in ballot at this point, don't put it in the mail. Like, you need to be either taking it to, the county building downtown, like, fill it out, take it, and they'll be open till 8 p.m. Or you can take it to your polling place, turn it in. They do what's called, they spoil it, and then you could vote there at your polling place. But just, make a plan, like, call someone. Like, I've been talking to, my parents, like, we talked about who we were going to vote for. My dad got a mail in, my mom's going in person, my sister, my cousin. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. What's the plan? Okay, mom, you drive dad down, have him drop off the ballot, drive right, just pull right up in the front and go away, like, whatever it is. If you got a neighbor or somebody, if you ride you need a quick ride, or can I walk with you to the polls? Like, come up with a plan, make sure that you get there together. Unfortunately, we don't live in a state where you can register on the spot. In some states, like, you could show up to your polling place on that day and register and vote. That's not a thing in Pennsylvania. It absolutely should be, but it's not, unfortunately. So if you are not registered, you cannot do that tomorrow, but you should absolutely do it on Wednesday. Like, go, like, type in register to vote. You can do it online. Don't let another election pass where you do not exercise your voice. People died to be able to exercise their voice.
Yeah.
And think about, again, like, I'm always going to throw out there, like, I know in this group, the next set of school board members, city council members, mayors, all those things are in here. And so be thinking about, like, why not me? Like, why am I not sitting in this seat? I know what Black people need. I know what my family needs. I know what my community needs. Be thinking about that as well. But definitely, like, call 3 people. We'll send out a text chain in a second. We'll send out, let me send you this meme or whatever. Be like, hey, you plan to vote tomorrow? You turning your ballot yet? What you doing? Make sure you let somebody know how important it is.
Yep. I love all those steps. And I'll just add that if anybody has issues tomorrow, maybe you have a question, you're not sure where to go vote, you need a ride there. Most people don't, because we have 1,327 polling locations, which means they're very, very, very much based on our neighborhood, but you might still need a ride or something like that. Let us know. And so I did not put our number in the resources, my bad on that. But I know the website did show, but our VEEM line is 412-465-0551. It rings through to my phone and I will answer, and just leave a message. If I don't, I will call you right back. and try to figure out what's going on and how I can help you. Questions about, what to do, where your ballot needs to go, all those sort of things, whatever it might be. We have learned a lot in these 8 years, and so we can help in a variety of situations.
Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. tomorrow. As long as you're online by 8 p.m., you can vote. So stay in line.
Stay in line. Text 3 people. Call
And
3 people.
I'll send an email out with this video as well as some of the links that Maryn and Allyce have given me. And yeah, I hope y'all make it to the polls. I sent in my absentee ballot last week and casted my vote. And
I voted last week too.
Same.
I hope everybody does, because we're in, we're not in a good place right now politically. So
and if it's an off day for you and you happen to go in person, take your kids with you if you can.
Yes.
Like, let your kids experience what it looks like to go into a polling place and vote. Like, that's one thing that like I always appreciate about my parents. Like, they always like took, and I know back in the day, we had the little click clack ones that would all spin. Like, that was super fun. But take your kids to just see what it feels like to experience that if you can. Because they need to understand, because you're voting for them too, because they can't. So, let them know what that feels like to have that experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies. This was a great
conversation.
Thank you.
I appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, your time. Don't forget to give yourselves grace this week, because y'all already put on for your city. So make sure you take some time out to take care of yourselves. And to the mamas who are listening, take some time out to take care of yourself after Election Day, before Election Day, because no matter what's going on in the world, you still deserve love. You still deserve kindness. You still deserve all the good things. So have a good night, y'all. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much.